This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 179 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Now, I've been wanting since the start of the year to do an episode connected to the awful bushfires that Australia's been experiencing this year. Now, at first my idea was that I'd have an episode where I talk to people who've been back out there travelling in the areas that were worst affected by the bushfires to figure out, where we can go and how we can get people to back into visiting those areas. So that is an episode I still will do in the near future. But in kind of starting to gather these stories, I ended up having really interesting conversations with two Aussie women about kind of travel and tourism in the aftermath of the bushfires in a kind of a more deep and thoughtful sense. So I decided to bring these two stories first, and then later in the year we'll have some, kind of from the trenches, get back out there and see these amazing areas kind of stories as well. So my first guest today is Louise Southerden, and she had lots of really thoughtful stuff to say about how the travel industry is going post the bushfires.
Well, I think the response from the travel industry in Australia to the bushfire crisis over the past summer has been quite interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of wanting to encourage people to go back to bushfire-affected regions. And particularly communities that are really dependent on tourism, particularly over the summer months, which have just lost so much of their income, as well as tangible things like houses. And of course, all the wildlife has been affected, and the millions of acres of bushland. I think those initiatives that we've seen, Tourism Australia's has launched its Holiday Here this year campaign. New South Wales also has a Love New South Wales one to encourage people to travel within their state if they live in New South Wales. There are clever online initiatives like Empty Esky, which is a website, emptyesky.com.au, where people can take an empty esky somewhere into a regional area and buy up what they need and fill their esky by buying locally. There's It's My Shout, where I think you can buy a coffee or a beer for local people online. I think you can buy it, and then people can go into their local pub or cafe, and they can someone's paid for their coffees for the next month or whatever, and there's Spend With Them and Book Them Out, and there's a Road Trip for Good website, which is being constantly updated with bushfire affected spots, restaurants and places to stay, and activities and attractions that are now open for business that might have been closed. And so if you're driving in a particular region, you can check the website and find out which places you can go to. But I think what's been interesting, personally, my perspective has been that what I've found interesting is that it's a little bit, we're open for business, and it's almost, but I think that was jarring with me a bit, that we can't just pretend that this crisis has, it's ended, but we can't get back to normal. And I was thinking that they might be open for business, but this isn't business as usual, and it can't be. I think helping communities is really important, but it's just, helping communities recover, is important, but it's just a first step. And we really need to do all we can to stop these things happening again. This is just the latest symptom of the climate crisis. And
yes, it's not suddenly going to disappear and never happen again, is it?
That's right. We've got major drought still in large parts of Australia, and all sorts of other water problems, as well as, climate related issues. And a travel writer I know actually put it really well and said, donating money makes us feel better, but I'm not sure we should be feeling better. So I think there's that sense of, it is. And I think there's that sense of, we can donate and we can help and we can visit these regions and oh, well, that's done, great. We can just get on with doing living our lives as normal. But I think it needs to be a wake up call. I think we need to, it's close to home. It affected a lot of people, not just in those regions, but because it was holiday season, a lot of people were affected from the big cities they're on holiday. And so, it bit a lot of people, I think, this bushfire season. And I think I hope it will be a wake up call. I mean, I know there's the Zali Steggall from Manly, where I used to live in Sydney, is putting up Australia's first ever Climate Act to Parliament in March. And I hope that kind of, I don't know, I guess as in the travel industry, I think we can too often think that we're outside the bounds of regulations and what we maybe should be doing to help the planet. But I think the travel industry is slowly waking up to the fact that we do have a major role to play. And I think we depend on natural attractions and healthy communities for our business and our livelihood. And I think that's also the flip side of that, is that we have a unique opportunity to also work for the good of the environment and the communities in those places that we visit. So, and I think more and more travel companies are realizing that. And there was a new initiative that started in January this year called Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, set up by some people in the UK, and it's global. And they've now, I think, got about 68 travel companies, organizations and individuals who have declared a climate emergency. And I'm planning to join them. I'm just in the process of developing a climate plan, and it's basically about signing this declaration, but it's not a pledge. It actually has to be concrete goals that you set for the year ahead, and you're committing to sharing your progress and also encouraging others to take on this commitment, and also advocating for climate action. And it's a really interesting development, I think. And I think it's planned at the moment just for this year, 2020. But I think at the end they're working towards making it a longer project. Right. And I think it's I think it's really exciting. It's a big commitment, and I think a lot of people who work in travel might think it's career suicide to be thinking about it. And I think there's something like this, that it's almost like heresy to mention that travel contributes to climate change. There's a thing that, we don't want to bite the hands that feed us. Yeah. And we almost think that we should be pretending that climate change doesn't exist so that we can get on with earning a living and living the lives we live. But I think we can still make a living from travel and acknowledge that we need to do something about climate change. And I think that's what this declaration, Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, is about, that it doesn't have to be either or. Yes. We don't have to completely quit traveling, because traveling is important, especially in a country like Australia where, do we really want to live in a country where nobody travels beyond Australia? I mean, we'd be a pretty different country if we didn't travel. Yeah. I mean, if we didn't have let anybody in from other countries.
Yes, if we couldn't fly anywhere, we're stuck. Yeah. So, and I think, I mean, maybe I'm just being the eternal optimist, but I feel like, the tide has changed so much in public opinion and public thinking that it's not long before it would become career suicide to be in the travel industry and not say, hang on, what can we do to travel better? Like, exactly. I think it's coming to the point where, consumers who are consuming travel are going to be much more, are already much more mindful of this. And I think that, I feel, I mean, obviously perhaps I'm biased because I'm, further down the track on thinking this, because I get input from lots of interesting people. But, I think I'm much more drawn to a company who is prepared to sign up to this kind of, commitment than one that's not.
I think that's really important. Yes, I agree with you. I think not acknowledging climate change will be, business suicide for some companies. And I think I think more and more companies are realizing that, and hopefully it's only new so far, but hopefully it's going to really grow this movement.
Yeah, I saw they've got some really big travel companies signed up, so that's a real positive. And as much as, the bushfires has been a horrible, it's been a horrible event and season in Australia, I think, or I hope that a lot of positives will come out of that. For example, people being more inclined to, to be so thoughtful and mindful of their travel. And I'm waffling, but I hope that that's one of the positives to come out of a horrible situation.
I hope so too. And I think just to put this tourism declares a climate emergency in context, you might have heard about countries and local governments all over the world declaring a climate emergency as well. And that's how it all started. And at the moment, I think when I last checked a few days ago, more than 1,300 jurisdictions in 26 countries so far, representing more than 800 million people all over the world have declared a climate emergency.
Wow.
So it's not out of the blue. This is tourism and travel just really getting on board and agreeing that we have a unique opportunity I think to contribute to what's happening and to do good, to help travel do good rather than doing any more harm.
So I was really pleased that my chat with Lou ended up being kind of ending on an optimistic note, that perhaps all of this, this horrid summer we've had might end up providing a chance for us to do a lot of things better. So, well, let's hope that that's true. Now, my second guest today is Caro Ryan. Now, Caro lives in the Blue Mountains. She told me when we chatted that right outside her window, she can see people heading down to the Three Sisters in the Blue Mountains just down the road from her. It's a beautiful part of Australia, which I have to get back to soon. And so Caro told me a lot about how the bushfires were affecting the immediate area, and also we got into this kind of bigger picture thinking as well.
I think that the thing about a community or a region recovering from bushfire in relation to tourism is it's very easy to sort of see it as affecting the obvious tourism businesses, like, the accommodation aren't having, bookings, the attractions. So, maybe there's a set big tourist attraction in a town, they're not getting the ticket sales. The cafes aren't having, that kind of turnover and cash flow for these small businesses. But what's been really, really amazing is understanding and learning how much within a small community everyone is so connected. And because our lives are so interconnected, it's not just the stuff that is seen as the tourism businesses, so those obvious ones. It's all the small businesses behind them that service that town, which employ loads of people as well that get affected. So it's obvious to think, the cafe is down on covers for the weekend, but it's actually then, it's not just the cafe, it's then the casual workers who, work in the cafe, the young people, that kind of thing. It's maybe if it's the restaurant, it's the laundromat who sends all their tablecloths out to get, the tablecloths washed. It's the then if cash flow is down, the business owners are less likely to want to, talk to their accountant or talk to, those kind of service businesses as well. So, wow. Or buy stationery from the local stationery shop. So it's this amazing flow-on effect, and I think that it shows one of the things that tourism and travel is actually it's this industry and market that has potential to do such good within a community. And I think one thing it's doing is opening the eyes up to people to the flow-on effect. And from a community, you've got not only those flow-on things, like I said, the laundromat or the bookkeeper or the accountant or whatever that's servicing them, but they all live and work around here, so their kids all go to school together. And so maybe the kids at the local school have lost, one of the kids of the families has lost their home. And it's like, your dad's the newsagent and but no one's buying stationery from you at the moment because cash flow is low and they can't afford it. And it's plus, plus, plus. And so everything's connected. Everybody feels the pain together. And I think what is becoming really obvious is that for communities to turn themselves around, they actually, how everyone is all affected, everyone must also all work together to try and turn that ship around.
Because it really affects everyone. So everyone in the town kind of needs to help out in some ways to help get the tourism back, which then kind of works out for everyone. It's I hadn't really thought of it like that. That's so true.
Yeah, and it's showing out really interesting ideas, and it's because, I mean, you know, the word thrown around by the politicians this season has been unprecedented. You know, it's an unprecedented fire season. It's calling for unprecedented thinking in terms of what can people do to recover. Yeah. So a lot of talk around collaboration for tourism businesses, you know, and maybe businesses that in the past might not have collaborated. Or it's what has been a really lovely example here where I am in the Blue Mountains is that the local tourism organisation, which is a member-based organisation, so, you know, there's big businesses people see like Scenic World and the Explorer red bus that drives around the hop on off, and some of the big hotel groups, they pay a significant membership fee to be a part of that tourism organisation. There's other tiers that are lower down, but they've said, look, we're throwing open our doors, you know, for the next 4 months for all the small operators, little Airbnbs, you know, and little mum and dad, you know, corner shop cafes to just come in, hear from their speakers, and everyone try to work together to think what can we do different. So that's really nice.
That's really, I mean, in the long term, that's a really positive outcome to get those kind of collaborations happening that can make the longer term outlook for tourism better than it would have been without that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's also shown up, these unprecedented times also show up. It's shown up a lot of flaws in certain processes in business as usual, because you're not used to crisis. We're not used to not only crisis, but now trying to deal with crisis whilst we're in trauma, you know, whilst business owners are in trauma and families and communities. So, you know, it's shown how sometimes the business owners are crying out for a piece of tactical communication. Just get it out there quick. You know, this is not about a big, gorgeous, glorious regional branding campaign. This is about, I need something now to tell my Facebook community or my Instagram following that the whole of the region isn't a black.
Yeah, you can still come here. Yeah.
You can still come here. And so, and that's sort of, you know, it's hard when those beautiful, you know, branding and destination marketing campaigns you see with gorgeous imagery and videos and all that kind of stuff. And all of that strategy work takes time.
Yes. It's not an instant. Yeah, an instant get it out there. Yeah,
it's not an instant get it out there. So what has been really lovely, though, is that there's a whole lot of grassroots creatives up here in the Blue Mountains. And so myself and a couple of other people working independently, but sort of with the same goal. It's like, right, well, we're not a big, huge advertising agency. We're not a big brand and strategy agency. We don't need to go to board meetings and get sign-off on. We can make things right now ourselves.
Yeah, quick action.
Quick action. We can get it to market. We can get it in the hands of local business who can then decide if it matches their own demographic and their own audience, and push it out on their own social channels. And there's been some really lovely stuff happen. But yeah, it's that going, well, what doesn't work and how can we make stuff work?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. You know, there's a lot of opportunities out of disaster and trauma here, which is really lovely. So if I am a tourist thinking, am I going to head to the Blue Mountains? What will I see at the moment? What can I do? You know, should I go? What have you got to say to them?
Oh, man, I have got to say, not only bring your empty eskies and book them out. I'm just going to talk in hashtags right now. There are so many, that's the thing. There are so many hashtags people are wanting you to use. Outdoors is open is one. Holiday here this year is obviously another big one that Tourism Australia are pushing. Love local is another one. So there's all these things. So it's all about doing your research and finding the right information, because the fact is the Blue Mountains is so open right now. Mm-hmm. We have incredible areas of our amazing World Heritage National Park that is unburnt. So you can now go into places right now where there are waterfalls and yes, we have had a lot of rain recently too, so the waterfalls are really flowing. But beautiful, lush rainforest pockets and waterfalls and creeks and bushwalks. You can go rock climbing, you can still go canyoning, and it's just about knowing where to go to get that information. So national parks are on the front foot with that, which has been great. But also contacting the providers. I mean, there are some really sad stories of that came out of some of the recovery meetings I've been involved in, where one business had a whole that was going to be a wedding from the US. People were coming out here to get married in the mountains, and they were, booking out a whole resort, and like loads of local people would have benefited from that. They saw the media and immediately cancelled the whole thing
without even checking in or asking. Is it okay or not? Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, so I think something, we've got to get better at is countering the messages whilst they're happening in the news, whilst things are in trauma, whilst things are going, yes, this is horrendous. And obviously we don't want tourists right when things are burning. But as soon as the fires are out and things are safe, come on back.
Yeah, proactively contacting, booking people who are booked and stuff to say, we're still okay, make sure you're here, and that kind of,
people need proof.
Yes.
People want to see it, because at the moment the only thing they're seeing is these horrific bushfire imagery that the video and TV news and internet has been sharing, and rightfully so, because we need to get the message out about how bad it was and what led to that happening in the first place.
Sure.
But at the same time, you've got to counter it with some of the good news and some of the balance, because whilst we're a nation and while people are dealing with trauma as a nation, watching all these images for months they've been going on, we need to provide and look after and think about our nation's mental health. Yeah. And where do a lot of people get their balance of mental health from? It's from visiting national parks and spending time in nature. And if you think all of nature is burnt, what have I got? Where can I go?
Yeah, that's really scary and depressing to have to think that way. So you're so right. It's so important to get the good news side out there as well to balance that out. So do go back to the Blue Mountains. I'm going to get there as soon as I can in the near future. I also like that Carrie talked about, the potential upsides of having all these, for example, the small and large tourism businesses working together and collaborating in ways that they never would have done before. All of this optimism, I mean, there's a lot of downsides to it, but the optimism is the bit that I see the most. And you might have seen an article I shared in the Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers. And if not, I'll leave a link in the show notes. It was by Catherine Marshall, and it was called The Call to Revive Australian Tourism. And Catherine also noticed that, there's some positives to come out of this. And I think that, I don't know, I hope we look back on this bushfire season and have learnt so much from it that we can really change lots and lots of things. So that is my fervent hope. All right. Thank you very much for listening to episode 179 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. I've got some important links to share. So first of all, I chatted with Louise Southerden. She blogs at No Impact Girl at noimpactgirl.com. You'll also find her writing all over the place. And in particular, I'm going to share a link to a blog post that Lou wrote about post-bushfire tourism. And that link is in the show notes. I then chatted with Caro Ryan, and she blogs at Lots of Fresh Air. So her site is lotsofreshair.com. I'll also leave a link in case you're interested to the Australian tourism campaign for Holiday Here this year, because it's just an interesting example of something that, hopefully is going to prove to be, worthwhile for many of us. I mean, I have to admit that as an Australian, I have seen a fair bit of Australia over the years, but my son, who's nearly 10, has not been to every state, despite the fact that he's very, very well travelled. He's been to, 20 odd countries, but he certainly hasn't been to every state in Australia. And so that's an important thing, and we may well do some holidaying here this year. So that site, in any case, is at holidayherethisyear.com, and that will redirect you through to the right spot. So do come along and give us your thoughts in the Facebook group. It's at Thoughtful Travellers on Facebook. All of these links are in the show notes, and for this episode, you'll find the show notes at notaballerina.com/179. As always, thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.